G'day team, it is Kris from Genre Blender here to talk to you about another game. Today I'm going to be tackling a game that has really captivated my attention from early access, and it's now 5 years into development. This is Traveler's Rest, which is produced by Isolated Games and was released by Isolated Games and Indie Arc, I believe. So this game originated in July of 2020. I believe that was early access. What is fascinating about this game is I currently have put 95 hours into it, and I'll crack the 100 before this video comes out, and we've only just scratched the surface of a story arc being implemented into this game. As of September 12th of this year, we actually got a glimpse into what the first chapter of the story is going to look like. Up until then, we really had an idea of like an overarching story with like the first major update of the game, but not a lot else. So what has captivated me for so many hours? Well, it's not just me, I'm happy to report. There are over 7,000 reviews at the time of filming, and we are skewed towards a mostly positive rating on Steam, and I've been utterly captivated by this little tavern running sim. So this game to me is captivating, it is charming, it is cozy enough to lull me into that comforting, repetitive experience that makes me want to come back for more. There is enough in here to keep me captivated and going, I wonder if I can fit in another day or just 20 minutes. And I've definitely used this game to help me do other tasks that are not as pleasant as playing Traveler's Rest. So let me tell you what it's about, or at least what we know so far. When you open in the game, you are open to a dingy inn, and there is a mysterious figure in front of you. That figure says, hey, let me tell you a story and I'll get you one more round. Through then, you understand the story of the greatest tavern keeper there ever was, named Rygar, who quotes us, only one who has served 1,000 times will find themselves worthy of being served. The Traveler Keeper's king's legacy lives on. Then there's castle horns blaring, which means the Fellowship of the Tavern Keepers has been summoned, and we need to find out who will surpass the other members for the Fellowship in honor and glory. You, my friend, who have had quite a few ales, have decided that you want to go up against the Fellowship. The person in front of you sighs, buys you another drink, and you sign the deed to a dump of a tavern on the road leading into town, and then you pass out, which is just another Friday night. This introduction has been part of the game for some time, so you understand there is this fellowship that you'll probably be competing against at some point, but we've only really started to get that storyline and what that looks like recently with this September update. And yet, it has kept me captivated for 100 hours. The concept of this game, at least to me, is fairly simple. You take over a rundown tavern with a cat-like spirit inside that thinks you have absolutely no chance of turning this ship around, but you get to create something wonderful, and you do just that. What starts out as a relatively small dining room with a kitchen just off to the back soon turns into a lively tavern that you can expand upon and decorate to your heart's content. To begin with, you are taught a series of very simple recipes for food and lager or beer to keep your patrons happy, and you will continue to grow your repertoire as the game goes on. Each level comes with points that you can spend on recipes. I will just put a caveat in here though. Be careful with what you spend those points on, because they do get fewer and farther between when you get further into the leveling system of the game. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go into my criticisms. You do have the option of farming, so there is a farming element in here, which if you hang around here for a little bit, you'll know I absolutely love a farming element, so this is one of my favorite things that we get to do in the game. But you're running a tavern and you're trying to save costs because you need that money to do other things, so growing your own produce is a really good start to doing that. At the moment, at least, there is no bar of like stamina or limitations on how much energy you can exude during the day, so you can create your farming space as big as you want it. Just be wary that you do need to be able to do that and also manage your tavern within a given day, which lasts roughly around 20 minutes. You can get to a point where you can leave your tavern largely once you have staff, which I believe you get in about level 6 or 7. You can start hiring people to operate the tavern for you. Personally, for me, I really like running the tavern and like serving the customers. Maybe I'm just a big acts of service guy. In one of the later expansions, so not in early access, once we got full access to the game, we did have some exploration elements that were added, adding several new additions to the map, from the original game. So originally it was just the tavern and a little farming area that you had out the back. With the next expansion or the full release of the game, we were given access to things like the town, where you can go and buy produce and talk to like butchers and fishmongers to be able to stock your tavern if that's something that you choose to do. You can also get your seeds if you want to create a farming plot, so the seeds are much cheaper to buy than the actual goods themselves. And if you don't want to farm, you can just save up a lot of money and go and buy that produce fresh. We have a beach, so you can go and get your own crustaceans without having to pay for them. You eventually will learn how to fish. I'm not very good at it in this game, so I just tend to buy my fish from the fishmonger. And we also have other elements like a farm, which you can go and get some local produce from other people who have farms in the game. I thought this was really cool. The scenes are beautiful. The colors are a really good mix of those calming greens and pastels with some sharper elements to it, which make this world feel very, very lived in, no matter where you go. The latest scenes that we have, and you'll see some on the screen as I'm talking, of the updates to the chapter are just beautiful. We had things like a festival added. We had the actual challenge themselves. I've only come across one so far, which was added, and it was a lot of fun, and it adds a lot of color and atmosphere to the game. Now, there is also a crafting element to Traveler's Rest, which is admittedly something that I have not explored to the full extent, even 95 or so hours in. Personally, I found it more convenient to create better recipes, and maybe this is just my preference in leaning on these types of games. I focus on the food and the beverages that I'm serving to the patrons, and I get more money from them, and because I'm able to bring in more money that way, I just buy the crafting recipes that I need. But if you are a gamer who enjoys design, you'll find that a lot of the games that I play and showcase on this channel are very simple in design, because I am terrible at actually designing things. I like things very boxy and square. It just makes sense to me. So for me, the decorating element and the crafting element isn't something that I love in this game, unless it's for survival. We're not surviving, but you know what I mean. Unless it's like necessary to progress the next stage of the story or the tavern. I often get frustrated because I forget that I need things to build rooms, and we'll get to building rooms in just a minute. Like I said, if you are a player that really likes those crafting and design elements, you might find that your time is better spent with crafting, design, and decorating, creating these beautiful spaces, and less so on the tavern running aspect, which you can largely do with staff as long as you have enough time in the day to create the recipes, both liquid and substantial food items, to keep that tavern running with the staff that you have available. Now, not only can you cook and serve your patrons, but you can also house them. Eventually, you'll upgrade your tavern to be able to build rooms for the inn, which they can go ahead and stay at. This is an excellent way to boost your income every 1 to 3 days, depending on when people turn up and request those rooms. It has a fun little haggling mini game that you can go ahead and play to try and get some more money for those rooms. Now, I will say, be warned, your guests can be absolute grubs, and it is a good idea to hire a housekeeper as soon as you start building those rooms, because that housekeeper is so invaluable. They tend to their every whim, whether it be food, drink, because obviously in a medieval tavern we have room service, why wouldn't we? And they'll also go ahead and clean those rooms for you each and every day. Talk about the modern age. Now, you probably get the point by now that I really love the cozy simplicity of this game, and that does extend to elements like your character creation and the decoration. I will say, in terms of decorating games, this, while it isn't a decorating game at its core, the decorating elements that we do have in this game do not feel overwhelming to me as someone who doesn't necessarily gravitate towards those aspects in these games, whereas I find that games that have a lot of choice, so things like Sunhaven, which has a lot of choice in there, can often feel quite overwhelming to me because I don't really know where to start. The simplicity of this game extends to things like character creation and decoration. Your options are relatively limited, but they're still customizable enough so that you feel like you can make the space your own. So each different room can look slightly different if you want to go with that vibe. Again, if you're looking at my tavern, which I'll showcase on the screen at some point, it's all very same. There's very little difference between the rooms here. Traveler's Rest really lets me live out my fantasies of running a humble establishment in a medieval village where I can feed the masses before they go on their adventures. I don't have to go on adventures. I just need to feed them before they go on theirs. And if they want a crafty little IPA before they go ahead and go into the next battle, then so be it. I'm very happy to provide that. Now, even though I personally love the game, It's not all sunshine and roses. I will preface this with that. It does have very positive reviews, but it's not overwhelmingly positive. And let me tell you a few reasons why that may be. If you're looking for a little bit more out of your tavern experience, there is a few gripes that I have with this book. There is a few gripes that I have with this game, even though I really enjoy it. My biggest one here is the conversation track in the tavern itself. So when you're running your tavern, there is a conversation like loop, which makes it sound like a lively tavern and people having conversations in the background. Now that normally would be fine. However, you can actually pick out some words in this conversation track which runs on a loop, and you're in that tavern for about 10 minutes of your day. So you are listening to this loop over and over and over again. If it was just sort of white background noise, it wouldn't be so bad. But there is a gentleman who sounds surprisingly like my father-in-law saying Tuesday night, over and over and over again. And that can be a little bit jarring. So if it is, maybe just turn down that particular effect on your music options when you can, or your sound options when you can. The other thing that I will say is there have been elements introduced through major updates which have not come to fruition yet, and I'm kind of surprised that we're 5 years into this game, or just over 5 years into this game, and we're only now just getting the first chapter. So there are elements like there's a guy frozen, or a miner frozen in ice up in the mountains, which you can go and explore, and that person has been frozen there for many a year, and I'm sure that will come into the story at some point, but I don't know when that is going to be. So, there are things in there where you're like, is that going to be something, or is this person just stuck in ice forever? Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen there? But the fact we are getting a new update a little bit later this year fills me with hope that the story updates are going to become more frequent and regular until we get the full potential of what this game can be. The tutorial, if you are someone who is able to figure it out, I probably would recommend you skip the tutorial. It's relatively easy to figure out the gameplay here, but the tutorial is so long-winded, and if I hadn't played it before, if I didn't know that I enjoyed this game immensely, I may have dipped out in the tutorial. It takes about 4 in-game days to get through the tutorial for something that I think could all have been pushed into one in-game day, 20-minute stint to teach you everything that you needed to know. But it did feel incredibly long-winded. I think it took me close to an hour to get through just the tutorial. Some people might like that and want to go ahead with it. I did that in an hour, and with speeding up whatever I could. And the last major gripe that I have with this game is the leveling system. Now, the leveling system, when you first get into it, is pretty simplistic. You do things in the tavern, you create recipes, you serve your patrons, you level up, and it's not too bad. When you hit your major level milestone, so when you unlock being able to have staff in your tavern, it seems to get a lot slower. So your experience points don't build up. I'm not saying that it's a normal, you up your level so it takes longer to get to the next level. That's completely normal for a leveling system. What I'm saying here is it seems to take an obscene amount of time to get to the next level once you hit like 8 or 9. And I'm not sure what the reason for that is. You craft more complex recipes, you have the option to go and fulfill quests where you can get that experience, but it seems to take like an age to learn anything new. And I was saying a little bit earlier with those recipe points, as you level up, you get recipe points that you go and then go to the portal and you exchange them for actual recipes that you can go ahead and craft in your tavern. When it takes like 1 to 2 in-game weeks and you've only got the 4 months, and each month or each season is 28 days, it seems to take a very, very long time to be able to get something new. So choose your recipes wisely, because you may be sitting on them for some time. Now, that being said, like I said, the next update doesn't look too far away. So it is set to release early December of 2025, and there seems to be plenty more to come. I really enjoy that repetitive aspect of it. I feel like this game doesn't take it too seriously. It gives me enough to jump in and say, I want to play an hour of something cozy and fun, and I have a great time with it. I will say that ever since it came out in early access, there have been 2 systems that say it's going to come soon. One of those is magic, and one of those is relationships. And I'm really interested to see what those 2 things bring to this game. Who knows? Maybe we'll get another story chapter in December. Maybe that person in the mines will finally be thought, or we can help them journey on their way. I'm not sure. But regardless, this is a game that I will likely go to and go back to time and time again for its comforting feel and its cheesy banter when you do get to interact with other characters. And for the price point, I think it's about $26. Don't quote me on that. I'm thinking $26 to $27 AUD. I would say this one, for me at least, was a steal. Does this look like something you would play? Let me know in the comments down below, or if you have given it a go and you've got some thoughts, also let me know down there. If you like this content, please give it a like and a subscribe if you so choose. Ryan will be here with their own solo video later in this month, and you can catch our podcast episodes, which happen right towards the end of every month. So I will be back in a few weeks' time with another gaming video. I think I'm doing a demo. I'm going to play a demo live and see what happens there. But until then, I will catch you in the next one.